All right, this is it. Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Um, our first episode, Glenn.
Welcome to the club. That's what's supposed to start like, man,
Yeah,
we need some like fresher beats.
What's
Send
your
it out.
fresher
that's
beats?
Send it out
right.
to
Oh my
Anna
gosh, we're
P.
all here. We're finally doing it, you guys.
All right, first
Yeah, I mean,
episode. Exactly. Go ahead. Go ahead.
how long have we discussed this?
Too long? Couple of months? No, just kidding. Maybe a little bit longer. But we
Yeah.
Wow.
had this. Look, the idea was there,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's just about taking action. But we're sellers. We're on eBay. We're
Yeah, all of
business
the
We're
above.
busy.
busy.
Yeah,
You know, it's tough. It's tough.
yeah. So,
You think
yeah. So I
2,000
think,
active listings are going to just manage themselves right now?
yeah.
I
I don't
don't
I
think
mean,
so.
think so.
10,000 for Anna.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll
10,000.
get
We
there.
haven't gotten that
But
far
it's
yet.
true. We've had this. We've
Okay.
been
Yeah.
mulling over this for a
Yeah.
while,
So,
and I think it was a really exciting idea for all of us. And so now we're actually pulling it together, making it happen, and it's going to be so worth it. I'm so excited to see what happens with the podcast and the community. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the timing of it was crazy because this year we were all three invited to eBay Open Seller Week. So I mean, leading up to that, we try to like plan as much as we can. We try to sneak in one episode, and we might have to just keep that for the archive someday. Um,
oh,
but
yeah.
let's just talk about the name, Seller Club. How and why did we collectively agree on it? Glenn, what do you think, Seller Club?
Oh, I thought you
You
were
want to
saying, oh,
pass it
Anna.
along? I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we
Okay,
can
go ahead.
keep
Go
doing
ahead. Go
that.
ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Anna, yeah.
we really racked our brains for a while because, there's a lot in a name, right? That's the cover you judge a book by when it's a podcast. so,
Mhm.
um, but I think for me, what I love
Mm-hmm.
about the name Seller Club, it's simple and it's exclusive, but you're invited, right? It's like, it sort of speaks of definition. Like we're a group of people that understands each other because of what we do and how we see the world and how we live our lives as sellers and entrepreneurs. But it's also like inclusive because if you're our people, then you totally belong here and you are definitely invited. And that's a really good feeling too.
For sure. What about
Thank
you,
you.
Glenn?
What a great answer. You know what?
Ditto. That is a cop out.
Ditto to that.
Oh
Just kidding.
no,
No, I really
that's
like. Look, I think Seller Club makes complete sense because we're also, like you said, inviting maybe people that want to jump
Oh
into
yeah.
this mad reselling world.
mm,
And you're fully welcome to do so.
mm,
But I do like that we speak our own languages, whether you're selling
Right.
from the thrift side, from the sneaker side, from the retail or the online ARB, like wherever you're coming from, a lot of the things we're going to talk about really make sense to everybody if you're trying to build a business
Totally.
on this platform. So
Love it.
there we go. Seller
mhm.
Club.
Yeah, I mean, man, that
So
was my
Ken's
answer.
gonna
Glenn
Ken's gonna
stole it.
ditto.
There's gonna
Ditto.
be a lot. He did say like the language. That was really the angle I was going to. Is like we speak the same language. So, I think yeah. I mean, we kind of have like our own code words, right? Like, we feel the same pain. I think that's a bit. That's the cool part about it. Is like, oh, like
Yeah.
a return or a pesky customer. We all feel it. Like we even though it may be different variation
Right.
of dollar amount, right? Because like I mean, me and Anna literally had a conversation. She's like, oh, I have this $150 X amount of return and it's painful. And then I said,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a $700, it's painful. I mean, like, it's not even the figure itself, it was just the fact that it didn't
Yeah,
go
it hurts
through
either
or it's
way.
coming
But
back.
you totally one
And
upped me
Yeah.
on
and
that one.
yeah.
However, I'll let you have it
Yeah.
because I do not want a $700 return.
What was that?
It
What
was
was
a
that
Oh,
item?
PlayStation
really?
5, a
What?
PS5,
No.
Stop
a
it.
sealed
Who is
PS5
returning that?
gonna get returned.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, they said at first they claimed that they didn't receive it, so it got
Mm.
delivered. So case got closed.
Hmm.
Next thing you know, after like 2 seconds, item
Uh-uh.
does not work. So I was like, so
What?
what is it? You didn't get it, or it doesn't work? So I'm
That
already
is
thinking
very
a switcheroo is
interesting.
coming up.
Oh man. Wait, so what are you gonna
Yeah.
do next then, I guess?
So
What's your
I mean,
follow-up?
man, I've called eBay, let them know about the situation, but like anything
Right.
else, it has to go through proper channels, that it has to be received and everything like that. And if it doesn't, go through, obviously they've had a record. I mean, the buyer does have a zero feedback, so I mean, we don't want to discriminate of a zero feedback buyer, but when it's like a seven
We
hundred
can and
dollar
we will.
buy.
Just kidding.
We can see again. See, guys, this is why we made this podcast, because all of a sudden we just
I
literally
know.
start
I
talking about
know.
my pain, and then you guys are like, Glenn's like, "What are you gonna do about it?" I was like, "Glenn, come on, let
Let
me
me
live my day
live. Let me
day by day,
live.
because they still have 30
Oh
days to
yeah, they gotta
return it,
ship
Glenn.
it.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
true.
they still have
Yeah.
It could
30
never.
days, so they could. Yeah, they could,
True.
wait till the last day to ship it, and then next thing you know, ship me a box of rocks. So, welcome to the club.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the club. Now, can a customer really be pesky if you never answer their messages? I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow.
No, we do not
Wow.
promote that here at Seller Club. You answer
Yeah,
all.
sounds
I was
Customer
like
gonna
service
say,
is number
so,
one.
sounds like Glenn is attend
yeah,
our eBay Open
Glenn, don't
a
miss the
seller
seller
takeover
takeover.
session. Anna, what do you
Oh,
think?
my bad.
No,
Oh,
but
yeah, my
I
bad. My
it's funny that we're
bad.
getting into some
All
of
right, go
these
ahead.
like more granular details because I'm sure a lot of people hearing this right now are like, "Oh my gosh, yep." but that's the cool thing, like we get to share our
Yeah.
different perspectives on this podcast. We come from slightly different backgrounds, but not as different as you might think in some cases, which is also interesting. But like when stuff like
Hmm.
this comes up, we have our own experience, we have each other to draw on, and we get to sort of continue the conversation and go, yeah, what do you do in that situation? What are the best practices, or what are the options,
Yeah.
or how has this worked out before, what are the
Hmm.
considerations? Like, that's so helpful. It's actually funny, earlier today, during eBay Open. It's actually during the conference right now, and it was a virtual day today. And in the main chat for the whole
Hmm.
conference, someone made the comment like, "I don't understand how hearing from other sellers is going to help my business." Like, that was their comment, and I was like, "Buckle up, man."
Mm,
I mean,
wow.
it's not going to help you if you don't apply it, or you
So
don't start considering the things you're hearing from other sellers, like, and
that's true.
try and connecting the dots of like how that does apply to you or your business. But, you know, I think the
Hmm.
truth is, I was flabbergasted someone actually asked that like in real life, because I'm like, always want to hear from other people.
Yeah. How dare
Yeah, how
you?
dare you? No, but it's so valuable. We learn
Yeah.
so much from each other. Even in these dumb little frustrating situations,
Hmm.
there's so much we can learn and do better. So
Right.
that's why we're here.
Yeah, it's like when Ken, I mean, he's saying about returning, and I'm here
I know.
like interested, like, well, what are you doing
You're
next, and
invested
what's kind of going
already.
on? Even though, like, a regular person, yeah, they wouldn't even care. They'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, cool,
Yeah.
see what happens. But I
So
mean, I don't
yeah, I get
know. I guess
that's a new segment, Glenn. We have to track this return.
every single episode to see what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
What
We'll give
Yeah.
happened to
updates.
the
Yeah.
PS5?
Yeah.
But I think with when you talk to like maybe friends that you haven't talked to in a while, or maybe they
Hmm.
ask what you do, you're like, oh well, I'm an eBay seller, I'm a business, I'm an entrepreneur, or whatever you say.
Hmm.
I mean, they're gonna
Yeah.
be interested in it or they're not. And if you start
Right.
going deep into eBay lore and
They
eBay
won't.
nerd, they're not, they don't care. So that's
Well,
why
this is a
this
Okay, I
place
have
for
also
a
it.
question.
exists.
I have
Yeah.
a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's funny.
Well,
Before I ask my question, that
go
just
ahead.
reminds me. I wrote a book a couple years ago about my store and like how I run it and like all the little ins and outs, kind of for that reason. But I found myself always being surprised how frequently, maybe even people who weren't necessarily gonna sell on eBay, how frequently I would just casually have to mention like what I do for a living or whatever, and people would be so interested and they would ask me so many questions
Hmm.
about it. And I'd be like, are you sure you want to know about this? Like, do you really? But they just were like, what? I think people are surprised when people are making a living doing this. But yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
especially
But my
full
question for
time.
you
I
guys
mean,
is,
Yeah, that's true.
so because we all did something else before we did this, and so my question for you is, when you're in a situation where you're meeting a
Hmm.
new person and that kind of like age old question of like, so what do you do comes up. How do you explain yourself? Like, what's your answer for that? How do you phrase it?
Mm. All right,
Might we
Kenny.
might need take a second for this to
Yeah.
gather my thoughts.
So here's a
But
funny
I
thing,
Do
because
guess.
I
you?
tell
Do
people
you?
I'm a
That's
YouTuber
interesting.
first,
Yeah.
but go ahead, Ken. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Um, I jokingly I laugh and say I'm a personal
Ah.
shopper. So and if they pry a little bit more, then then I go into, well, I shop, I find good deals for people, specifically in the athletic
Okay.
footwear category, and
Mm.
then if they pry more, I actually say like, well, anything that you see at a Nike outlet, I probably have it in store and sell it or have sold it. So I think that's kind of like the short way of answering. But I know me and Glenn have discussed this way back on how do we actually
Yeah.
respond to this question, because you kind of want to have
Yeah.
like
Right.
what's your
Right.
elevator pitch, and there's been jokes going around like I'm an
Yeah.
ecom
Right.
guru.
Right.
So, passing the ball to you, Glenn. How do you respond to
I
that
actually have
question?
like two. You know what? Let me start with the first one. So
Hmm.
the first thing is, now I used to have someone that like she used to cut my hair. I used to go normally, go to the same place, same person. I
Right.
don't have to reintroduce myself. It's like I already
Hmm.
know this person. She does a great job. And then like out of the blue, she like quit, and I was like, "What happened?" Now I have some random person
Yeah.
cutting my hair. What do I do?
Nobody
Barbershop
wants to
And
be
talk.
in that
exactly,
situation.
and it always comes down to,
No.
what do you do? Nobody does. What do you do for a living? I'm like, oh man, now I gotta answer these questions. It feels weird. Like I just wanted a haircut, and now there's no escape. It's like, do I say like do I say like I resell? Do I say I have an eBay store? Do I say YouTube? So for the most part, I just go like the YouTube route. I feel like it's a little bit
Mm.
more interesting that way. And just like then I'll
Well,
get into
sorry,
like the
Glenn.
reselling.
Sorry, we
No,
don't
no.
I
have
mean, I would say that to the person
but
cutting my hair. Like, you better not mess
here's
it
a real
up because
question.
I'm a YouTuber and my hair needs to look good in the video.
That's
That would
true.
be a good angle.
That's
Oh.
Yeah.
true. I'm on video.
Lead with that.
That is true. I guess, but maybe your question should have been, how do you introduce yourself to others
Yeah,
that
because
are
that's what we're
in
really
the
doing
business
here
already?
today.
So
Oh,
yeah, do you
Mm-hmm.
introduce yourself a little bit different? Because when Ken was
for
introducing
sure.
himself to Jamie, I saw a little bit
Ah,
different on just on how he
Jamie,
introduced
yeah.
that
himself.
CEO of eBay, CEO of
Yeah.
eBay, just a CEO. Well,
Just the
how did I do it,
CEO.
Glenn?
Yeah,
I
what'd
mean,
you notice,
I don't
Glenn?
know what I said.
I
What
was
did I
like,
say,
oh
Glenn?
man. I don't even know what you said actually. That was just more of a run on joke. But I just kind of figure like how would you introduce yourself to somebody
Right.
that's already in that business, that like I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure it would be different than talking to like
Yeah.
someone that's gonna cut your hair.
Yeah,
Then
Anna,
Yeah.
how would you introduce yourself? Like, okay, networking event. We were just in
Right.
eBay Studio Atlanta. You meet a random person, never seen them. They don't know you. I mean, even though your face was
Your
plastered
face
all
was
over there,
plastered.
the giant 17-foot. Mine too,
There's a
but I
little
mean, I
bit of
had a camera,
hyperbole
so
going on here, you guys.
I think
Well,
that.
I mean, was interested
Yeah,
in
yeah.
asking you guys this question just because this has changed a lot for me since I went full time on eBay. But even my previous career, I would always have a hard time with this because I was a psychotherapist, and that's like a loaded thing to tell people when you're casually meeting them because they're like, "Ooh, are
Hmm.
you analyzing
mm.
me?" Or "Let me tell you all about my in laws," or "Let me tell you about my crazy ex," and you're like, "I'm not really actually like you're a therapist, and this is not a therapy session." So anyway, a lot of times though, I kind of did what you would do, Glenn, because I also taught like undergrad psychology classes at the same time as I was practicing, and so I would often be like, "I'm a psychology professor," because that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. But it kind of avoided like
Mm.
it was
I like that
selective,
though.
right? Selective
Hmm.
introduction. But now it's a little harder to explain for a different reason, which is just that I'm an eBay seller, so I can say that. And sometimes people may or may not know what that means. And like certainly, like you were saying, Ken, last night at eBay Open studio event in Atlanta, like we were in a room full of eBay people, so it was really easy because we all understand what we're talking about. But
Mm-hmm.
in that case, I usually will say like, "Oh, I've been selling for this many years. I have this many active listings." And most of the time, instead of "What do you do for a living?" it's "What do you sell?" Right? And so I find myself explaining like, "Oh, I have really
Mm-hmm.
miscellaneous inventory. I'm across all these different categories. My biggest ones are like fashion and collectibles. I love selling vintage stuff. There's just a few like sort of phrases that I will say that briefly describe like what characterizes my store. But the cool thing is also, part of the reason that I am a full time eBay seller is that I have a lot of other stuff that I like to do in my life. Like I write music and I sing and I write plays and I do all this creative stuff that I love that's just equally important to me. So sometimes I'm like torn about, including any of that stuff when I'm kind of introducing myself because it's not really just about what you do, right? It's like your whole lifestyle and who you are, and there's a lot more involved in
Yep.
that. So, but yeah, I think
Mm.
in an eBay or a reseller context, I will say proudly, right? I'm an eBay seller, 10,000 listings. I sell miscellaneous. Vintage is my favorite. Like those are kind of the bullet points. Yeah.
Okay.
Done and
That's
done.
that's
Straight to
a
the
pretty
point.
straight to the point. What about you, Glenn? How would you introduce yourself on a networking setting of full of resellers?
Well, first thing I gotta say is that Anna, I mean, this is episode number one. She's throwing around these big words like
well,
hyperbole.
well, quit
That's not gonna fly on
exaggerating
this
then, and I won't have
podcast. I
to
can tell
say
you right now.
it.
We
Didn't you bring me here for my vocabulary?
using these big words.
Not at
You're just trying to
all.
stump me and Ken, and we don't
Sorry.
appreciate that.
I
I'm
mean,
just
I
kidding.
mean, I mean, we're
Um,
probably gonna have to have an assistant, like Joe Rogan, and just do research.
yeah, Jamie, what is that?
um,
Can
You
you
should
type that
just
in? What
abruptly
does that
yeah,
stop
can you
mean?
me
type
if
that
I
in?
say a
What does that
word you
mean?
don't
And then
know and
or
force me to give the definition right on the spot.
Yeah.
I'll do
Well,
it.
You know
well,
what? I might have to
yes,
do
that is
that.
true. Let's do that because at the end of the day, Glenn, it's a level up program too. It levels up our vocabulary. I mean,
And
yeah,
exactly.
right.
And
The
more
next
It
thing
is
you know,
importantly,
cool.
it's a
huh?
club.
It's a
More
club.
importantly, it's a seller
Okay,
club.
it's a
That's
club.
right.
Yeah,
We gotta
yeah.
understand the
So
language.
yeah, yep, that's true. That
Exactly.
that is exactly true. So going back to the question, Glenn, how would you introduce yourself? Stop stalling.
uh, so yeah, I would probably say I do go with like eBay seller. Now sometimes I will get the response of like,
Oh
"Oh, is that like
yeah.
the website from like this
Yes.
old Beanie Babies?" Or depends
Yeah.
who's talking. And then if it's like a younger person, they might be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard about that." And then it's kind of
Mm,
like weird after that.
mm.
So, but I do
It's
go
like
the
an
eBay
older
side.
ancient
That
company.
is wild to me when
Yeah,
people haven't heard of
exactly.
eBay though. That happens
But
every once in a while to me too, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" What?
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah. They're
Well,
like, I
yeah.
know TikTok,
Even older
but
people. Oh, that's still
eBay,
around? I'm
that's a little
like, "Are
bit
you
different.
joking?" I don't know. I feel like I've always been on eBay. It's never been a question. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of
Mm,
weird. I mean, Um, but yeah, I definitely go the eBay route. I try to talk it up a little bit more, get them more interested, like
Yeah.
what
mhm.
I do, what I sell, and then I kind of go from like more sportswear, like
Okay.
shoes, cleats, jerseys, hoodies, anything related to like I guess
Mhm.
the major sports teams. Then I'll throw that in. Um, and for the most part, they're like, "Oh, okay, that sounds cool." And then that's where you might get some follow up questions like, "Well,
Mhm.
how do I do what you do?" Like, I
Mm.
just want to sell full time. That sounds cool. Sounds fun. Does not sound
Right.
like a hard working job.
Right.
So that's where you really
Yeah.
have to dig in deeper and tell them exactly
Mm.
what's going on. It's not that
Okay.
easy.
Okay. Okay. So your introduction becomes like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
life advice
You're like,
conversation.
"Listen."
Or
Did
a
it sound
career
like
advice,
did it
right?
sound like
No,
that?
I mean, like, which is good, which is good.
Mm,
I mean, um I think going back to that question, I think I have narrowed it down. I'm a long talker, if you guys don't know. And I have tried really hard how I could make it interesting and short. All right.
mm,
So um it goes like this, right? I said, "Hey, I'm Ken. I'm an eBay seller, and I sell sneakers." While saying that, I point down to my shoes.
Hmm.
So, cause also too, in in when you're talking to different categories, right? Sneakers could be,
Right.
what sneakers? Tennis shoes,
Hmm.
right? Like, especially we living in Cincinnati, a sneaker is not a word. It's tennis
Tennies.
shoes. It's gym shoes. So, and it becomes,
Tennies.
and now it becomes a topic and a conversation starter. But I said sneakers. Sneakers are, and then they always say like, oh, a cool looking gym shoes. No, sneakers.
Cool
So,
looking gym
um,
shoes.
yeah. So that's how I introduce myself to them, and at the same time, uh, I actually say I help. Um, I do seller development. So that's what I do. I do seller development and documented our journey through Instagram. And I have an easier kind of, I guess, intro, because when they want to know more about it, I always say, yeah, you should check out Hustler Hacks on YouTube.
Hey,
I
So
like
that's what I
that.
do.
it's the
So that's
bee
how I,
cross
plug him
pollinating.
in, and get him some followers. Yeah. So that's what I do. So literally that's what I do. And I said, if you want to learn
Okay,
more,
I
watch
will.
Hustler
Thanks.
Hacks. Watch all his videos. So think,
Nice.
yeah. That's literally what literally I say. Like, I mean, and anybody that have met me, could do that. And it's crazy because, like, even recently, they're like, "Oh, I love your YouTube. I love your YouTube." I'm like, I don't. I mean, I do have a YouTube, but not that kind of YouTube of like reselling. But when they say that, I always assume that, okay, they've
Yeah.
seen me on Glenn's channel,
Hmm. Hmm.
through our live shows, and even the other videos that we have done. So yeah, that's kind of like how, I guess
Yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
cool introduction. I mean,
Hmm.
that was a very natural way
Can I
of
ask you
saying it.
guys? Yeah, go ahead.
I want to know more. Oh,
Mhm.
I want to know
Go
more
ahead.
about what Anna sells. Now
Right.
you're telling us
Which
miscellaneous.
which is
Hmm.
vague.
Let's
Yeah.
get into it. What kind of miscellaneous are we talking about? And
Yeah.
10,000 listings, I might
Oh my
add.
Yeah.
gosh.
How did we
Yeah.
get to this
Absolute
point?
madness.
Tell
So,
us.
yeah, let me tell you. Well, miscellaneous truly does mean like across hundreds of categories on eBay. So, technically my two biggest like umbrella categories are clothing, like or fashion and collectibles. But collectibles means a lot of different
Mm-hmm.
things. Collectibles could be anything vintage in any other
Mm.
category, basically. Housewares, it could be toys or stuffed animals, it could be matchbooks or ephemera or lapel pins. It could be so many things. I do sell some shoes, accessories that are
Mm.
not necessarily collectible, but are just in the regular categories for those types of items. Some media, it's really all over the place. And I really am kind of a anywhere and everywhere type of sourcer. So I'm doing, yard sales, thrift stores, estate cleanouts, just every once in a while some consignment, every once in a while some retail arb, like here and there whenever I run across it. So it's really pretty diverse, I would say. Like a lot of people diversify on platforms,
Mm-hmm.
like having their same items on a lot of platforms. I like to diversify my actual inventory. Not that I'm opposed to other platforms, but that's just kind
Mm-hmm.
of where I've always put my focus. But basically, I've been selling on eBay. Yeah,
So eBay
eBay
only,
only.
eBay only, right?
Yeah,
Like,
up to this
right.
point
So,
for sure. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's getting
mhm,
more standard for people to be on multiple platforms. And I've actually sold handmade stuff on Etsy before, so I may at some
mhm,
point dabble in that with some of my vintage clothing or
okay.
something. But yeah, pretty much eBay's the main course for me. But yeah,
Mm.
it started with list 500 items as fast as I can because I started listening to the Scavenger Life podcast way back in the day. I'm sure that some of the people listening to this right now listen to all of that too. And yes, love Jane
Big
Ryan. Yeah.
fans,
And
exactly.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I just kind of like it had never occurred to me that somebody could have a full time and miscellaneous style eBay store um, before I heard about how they were doing what
Mm-hmm.
they were doing. And they were just so transparent week in and week out, giving their numbers, giving their daily life experiences, doing everything. That it made me realize it was really possible to do. And there wasn't like a catch. And so I decided to start doing that on the side of my practice just to kind of balance, balance work life balance a little bit better, have some supplemental income and have a smaller caseload because I was feeling a little burnout, stuff like that. And then after about 3 years of doing it part time, I decided to just go full time and have a lot more flexibility in my whole life overall. And closed my practice in fall of 2019, and we all know what happened in spring of 2020. So that was very interesting timing
Oh
to
Yep.
go
man.
full time. But I think I hit 10,000 listings pretty shortly after, or 10,000 items pretty shortly after I went full time. And so now that was, almost 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago about. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I did kind of just, go out sourcing all the time, handpicked, did everything myself for a long time, the whole time I was part time. I occasionally would hire a friend of mine to do photos just here and there, like a batch of items here and there. And he was great. And then eventually, right after I went full time, I was able to hire my amazing, wonderful sister in law, Amanda, to be kind of my ride or die. And she's done everything from sourcing to processing items and photographing and creating drafts. I all the inventory lives with me, so I ship everything and I kind of like oversee all of the management of the business and all that kind of stuff. But she still
Hmm.
works with me to this day, and so together we can kind of maintain that, and we're always trying to level up our ROI on our items as we're replacing things as they sell through. So that's kind of how it works. But it was just like a lot of sweat equity, a lot of, being scrappy and determined and
Hmm.
putting in the work to get those 10,000 items listed. So,
and
So when
and
did
I
you
I think
know? Oh, sorry.
go
I was
ahead.
gonna ask, when did you know to quit or stop
mm,
your practice? When was it the great time to do it? Is it because of like the sales that were coming
yeah.
in? Was it because of what was going on at the time at what you were doing and you this
Yeah,
is
so
more
I was
interesting to
feeling a
you?
lot
What
of
happened?
burnout, and actually there was a really definitive point in time that I realized I had a very like existential moment. So like what did I say? Like fall of 2019 was when I closed my practice. January of that year, I had a really tragic death in my family, and when that happened, it was totally unexpected.
Mm,
At the time I lived in Georgia, my aunt was the one who died. She was like super super important to me,
mm-hmm,
closest person to me and my family probably. And she like entered this crisis all of a sudden. I like had to drop everything, cancel all of my clients for 3 weeks. I was just at the hospital with her, not knowing if she was going to live or die. It was
mm-hmm.
really intense. But during that whole month of January, and she died at the end of those 3 weeks, and I went back to Georgia, and I was like, wow, I've got to now go do deep, difficult emotional work with all my clients, which was fine. Like I'm trained to do that, and I could, and I did, and it was okay. But
Yeah.
I had to just drop everything and not run my practice for 3 out of 4 weeks that month. And you know what paid my bills? My eBay store.
Mm,
And I like literally could not
mm,
care less
Mm.
about any of the bills or any of the stuff that was going on in my own world when that was happening. It was just like
Right.
intense crisis mode. And so when I got back home and the dust settled,
Mm.
I was like, wow, like that just covered me, and I wasn't even paying attention, and like thank God that had been there. Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah. Yeah, it
yeah.
wasn't like you set
no.
out to like quit or anything like that. It's just like an actual,
Yeah.
like life scenario that made you realize that, oh, like this is a
Yeah.
full-time, income possibly, and being early in the game
For
that
sure.
you
And
saw
that
that potential
opened
right
my
away.
eyes in like, the worst possible like situation, but even so, I
Right.
knew
Mhm.
I kind of already felt like, okay, I think I'm going to want to take a break from psychology and psychotherapy for some period of time. I knew at that point I probably could go full time, like if I wanted to, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to. And like your job and stuff like that that's part of your identity. And like, I love working with people. Like, I love the work I was doing. I was
Right.
just tired and I needed a break. And obviously, then I had this big loss in my
Mhm.
family, and that had a huge
Yeah.
impact too. But I basically was like, wow, like, I am also not getting any younger, and if I'm going to have bandwidth and time in my life for these other like creative projects and people and relationships and, you know, creative outlets that I care about, like I can't just let my life pass me by, you know? And I felt really strongly that way.
Hmm.
Also kind of in the wake of a loss like that. You're like you kind of reevaluate your whole life when something like that happens. And
Right.
you know, I still have a license too, and I may practice therapy again someday, but I know that for right now in my life, this phase of my life, like this is totally where I'm supposed to be, you know, it's what I'm supposed to be doing. So
Hmm.
Would you say that also, I guess, being able to like ship items or list items also kind of helped like your mind kind of like break away from everything that's kind of going
oh
on at the
yeah.
moment, just to kind of like do something else that like that's the one
Yeah.
thing that I kind of think about too, is just like you still have to live and
Yeah.
provide for yourself
Right.
despite how you're
Yeah.
feeling. And to do something like that, like, you know, outside of like the eBay side, has like nothing
Yeah.
to do with like the current situation. I mean, it's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
through like COVID and everything that had gone on. Like the mindset was just totally not there, and people getting sick and this and things happening. But at least with the eBay side of it, you just kind of get to do something that
Yeah.
takes your mind away
For sure.
from that. But I'm glad that also that, you know, you could, you know, that eBay was able to
Oh
take care of
yeah.
you sort of in a sort of way by
Well,
like, you know,
Yeah.
making that extra
and really,
money
like,
and not
I
have to
truly
worry
do
about
love
that.
eBay, like, I'm a fan, right? But, like, truly, it was my own work that I'd already
Hmm.
done that took care of me during that time, and that was super
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
gratifying.
true. It
Yeah.
just the results
Right.
yielded, like the hard work you
Yeah.
put in just showed results.
Yeah.
And I mean it that's kind of like how
Totally,
the
it
term we say,
literally
like
paid
it
off.
paid off, right? And it just magnified so much because the income that was
Yeah.
coming in was from eBay. And well, and the cool thing too, Glenn, I want to highlight is you and me have been in social media for the longest time,
Yeah.
and I think it's a good thing that we talk about like how Anna did all
Where did
this
I do
without
it from,
social media.
Ken?
Yeah.
From under a rock, that's what he
um
always tells me.
Inside a cave or something like
Yeah.
that, under a rock. I always say
He's
like
like, "I
yeah,
don't know
before
where."
Anna came out of came out of the cave, or out of the rock, or under a rock or something like that. It's just been evolving and evolving. Next thing you know, like out of a crater, out of a
I'm
crack or
like,
something like that.
"Crater."
It's just I don't know,
Yeah.
like terms are just
But yeah,
yeah.
without a lot of
Yeah,
community other
but
than
yeah,
the
like
Scavenger Life
that is
podcast, which
something.
I
Yeah.
mostly just listened to. I mean, I wasn't even like participating a whole lot in that
Yeah.
Hmm.
community very much, you know, but that really like kept me going, and that was my community, and it was kind of like asynchronous, you know.
Well,
Mhm.
well, there you go, guys. I mean, Anna Packer. Round of applause, everybody.
Ah, there we
But
go.
that's official introduction of our, one of the three co-hosts here at Seller Club.
I would
So
love to hear
I
about
guess
you guys if that's fine. Yeah.
let's trade places. Let's trade places. And Anna, go ahead and ask the questions. I mean, kind of like me and Glenn have been in,
Yeah.
I guess, social media thing, or what would that be? What would you ask us if
Oh.
you were still living under a rock and you just came out?
What year is it? No.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. A little Jumanji.
Well, it's really
What
interesting.
year
I
is
mean,
it?
I think there are so many parallels in our stories and in our lives that are very like interesting. I'm sure we'll run into that a lot as we do this podcast and talk about all these things.
Mhm.
Um, but like I'm very curious just from the social media perspective because like I did live under a rock. To me, social media can be like really overwhelming and like emotionally, relationally demanding. Um, yeah, exactly. And
And
so
toxic
that
at
would be
times.
honestly, that's my yeah,
And
yes,
distracting.
all
All
the
the
bad stuff.
negative
But
things.
All the
like, so
bad
why is
stuff.
it worth doing it? And what have you guys figured out about how to do it in a healthy way that's like help beneficial to you and helpful to everyone that you're putting it out there for? Because we all know that plenty of people who are not the people that you're putting it out for are going to have something to say about it, right? But like, but like, what is it that
Yeah.
compels you to
Mhm.
do it, and like, why is it worth it? I'm really curious about that genuinely because that's not something that I have spent a lot of time working on, and it seems very daunting.
No, man. Those are some pretty that's a pretty good
Thank you.
question.
Thank
Pretty good
you.
breakdown too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so originally, I mean, I started the channel because I wanted to, I guess, share my story on like paying off student loans, and I figured that it could help other people, because this was kind of like an ongoing struggle that
So
most
many.
people were going through at the time, and now it's, yeah, now it's like I think even gotten worse by how much
Mm-hmm.
school cost. I mean, and even back then, I think about how much I owed is like nothing compared to what I probably should owe now. Let's say if I did graduate now, um, and so that's really why I wanted to do it and to share that side of it. Now, with me going to like stores, there was one other guy that did somewhat like
Mm.
Ross videos or going to Ross to find stuff. But they were like very short and very pixeled because it was very hard to like get high quality videos, especially for a long period of
Pixeled. He
time.
just he just revealed his
Yeah.
age.
No.
It's black and white, you know.
Yeah. They had to like, yeah, it was rough. And so I remember going to these stores and like sometimes you'd find pretty cool stuff. I remember in high school there was like authentic
What?
NBA jerseys at Marshalls, and
That
I
is
was like,
cool.
oh man, this was cool. And they were
How
always
much did
like
that
too big for
how
me, but I really
how
wanted
much did that
them.
retail for, and how much was it when you saw it at Marshalls?
I think they retailed at like 140 at the time, maybe
Mm-hmm.
120, and I think they were
Man.
25. I think
Wow.
some of them were actually 40.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I only worked like semi part time at my family business, so I didn't really have much money, and nor did I really care about like I don't know flipping a lot or anything like that. Which I already had some eBay experience, but nothing like that to think about, flipping at a full time or even part time. And so when I created the channel, I was like, well, let's see how it does. I mean, I really don't even know. I didn't tell anybody. I was like, if people like it, they'll watch it. A lot of the times people try to get their like parents
Yeah,
and
you're like pile on,
brothers and
pile
everybody
on
like, oh, can you watch this?
Like
Can
an
you watch
inside
this?
job,
to
like an
trick
inside
to trick
inside
the
Yeah.
job
And for
algorithm.
views.
me, I
Yeah,
feel like they're not gonna
yeah.
exactly. They're not gonna critique you
Right.
like the way someone else would either.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I feel like, okay, they're gonna be happy and they're gonna watch your first one, and then after that, it's just kind of forgotten about. Or maybe they'll be like, hey, remember when you thought it was cool to start a
Haha.
channel? What happened to that? And then exactly, it's nowhere to be found. So I didn't tell anybody. It was just on the
I
low,
love
and then I'll
that.
just add some videos here and there. And I actually quit for a while because it did take a while to upload
Yeah.
videos, and I was getting kind of frustrated because it would just take forever to
It's
upload
just
compared to how
it
it
was
is
your
now.
internet. It was your internet speed. You were
Yeah,
uploading too
Ugh.
high
exactly.
of a
Speaking of
quality.
Oh,
pixelation,
way too high on that dial up.
so your standards have been high since the beginning.
So I was
Okay,
like,
got
ugh.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Standards have been high. Um, but I did quit though, so that wasn't a good
Mm-hmm.
thing. But maybe it
Right.
was because I did focus on school after that. I was like, let me just graduate and I
Yeah.
can get back into it some other time. And um, after that, it became into full time job. I got a degree and graphic designer, and then I moved up to
Ooh.
marketing coordinator. And I had the student loans, had to figure out how to pay it off. So I started to sell on the side, go to garage sales, go to thrift stores, do all that. And then I was making more money on the side than I was working at the full time job. And so then it was time to quit. And then the channel started to do a lot better too. I got more time to really focus on the channel. And then that's when I got an email from a young guy named Ken who was
A
interested
young guy
in
named Ken. What a
selling.
perfect segue.
Yep.
I
Yep.
So
know.
smooth. I
So
love
smooth.
it.
Yeah, I mean literally, like that's how it came together. I you know I Yeah, let's just start from us. Me and my wife decided to get married and move someplace that we didn't know a lot of people. That was really the intention. We looked at Australia and the US was our option. I just love the Aussies. I would watch videos. I want to hang out with
Totally.
kangaroos and stuff like that. and well,
In
I
the
In the
ended up,
pouch. You want
pouch.
and
to hang out
since
in the pouch?
yeah,
In the
and
pouch.
then and then I ended up in
Which is
Cincinnati.
not a lot like Australia,
So
Oh,
but
Ohio.
uh Ken, when I was
yeah,
a kid,
exactly. I
I was
mean,
obsessed with
I
the
don't know what we
crocodile
have.
hunter, Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, and I was convinced I was going to be a
Yeah, Steve Irwin.
herpetologist
Yeah,
and go
yeah.
work at the Australia Zoo, and
Okay.
then he died when I was like a child still, and I was like, well, there goes that career plan.
Wow.
But
Wow.
I was so intent on being a herpetologist
Mm.
just because of him. So we might have met in Australia
Uh,
in another
so
life.
so
Yeah,
yeah, I mean that was one of the no, yeah,
Oh.
that was one of the influences for sure. Steve Irwin, big National
absolutely.
Geographic guy growing up. So I've always been a fan of wildlife and stuff like that. So that was it, and it just so happened that we really didn't know anybody. Too it was
Yeah,
what would you call it? It
yeah,
was too different, right? Like to a point that we didn't know anybody, and that kind of like stopped us from making the move. And JC actually moved here to the states already, but she was in the Maryland area, and said like, okay, we can still move to a different
yeah.
state here in the U.S. where we really
Mhm.
didn't know a lot of people. So my dad knew somebody that worked for Procter and Gamble. He actually patented the elastic band for the
Really?
diapers. So
Oh.
very revolutionary invention, right? Like
Yeah,
We got to invent
yeah
something.
he's like
I
his name is
love it.
Ron, so we call him Uncle Ron.
Mm.
Because every time we would come to the states previously from moving here, he'd always invite us to his house, and he would show us with his patents. Because after that, there was just more patents that had to do with making diapers faster. So
Oh,
he evolved from making being part of the elastic band of diaper, so now to a point like how can they make
right. It's like the
machines
manufacturing.
to
Wow.
produce diapers faster, right? So to a point that his last invention, I think he's like down to like 12 patents. To They actually use
Shut
air to fold the
up.
diapers because mechanically it
And
was
probably
taking
broke down
forever, right?
more.
Yeah, so they shoot airs. Yeah,
My
so
mind's
yeah,
blown.
so like so but yeah, like he was just a brilliant guy. And he called me. It's like, hey, like, why don't you just stay with me and you can have the whole third floor of their house. At this point, like, all his kids were gone off, did their own. And he said you can have the whole third floor, and make it your house till you get everything settled. So we did that. Dabbled around because I was really waiting for my
Oh yeah.
papers to get approved to become a permanent resident, so I couldn't get a job. And that's when JC pretty much was like the breadwinner. But on the side I was flipping sneakers, so Facebook Marketplace, and Craigslist was on its last days
I
then.
know.
Good old
So it was more
Craigslist.
like,
Our old
yeah, that was
friend.
like Facebook groups. So meet up at a gas station, meet up at a
Wow.
mall. So that's what we did, and then got a job at a call center, and and then had a brilliant idea that's like, okay, I want to put up a call center in the Philippines and run it, and that fell apart. It didn't go through, and at that point I just pretty much really got bored because there was really no different challenges already. Went from like the bottom salesman to top producer to a sales trainer to a manager in
Wow.
a span of a year and a half. And they pretty much told me, it's like, well, there's nothing really up because there's more seniority people
Mm.
that have kids.
That's
Because I
not
don't have kids, they
discrimination at
would get
all.
preferred. And I was like, that's when I got
It's about who you
Oi.
know and who you're
no.
related to.
Yeah, that's when I felt the taste of
Yeah. And the ceiling.
bureaucracy, big word, or
So
the
lame.
glass ceiling, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, this sucks. And yeah, so pretty much told them like I quit, and they told me, it's like, wait, you gotta put in a 2 week notice. And I said, what's a 2 week notice? And I said,
Said,
I'm out.
you might notice it's going to be a
I
hard 2 weeks for
really didn't
yourself.
know what a 2 week notice is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I quit, and then I drove for Uber, and to just
Yeah.
make ends meet. And at this point I was just trying to find how I can make money. And it's like, coming from the Philippines to America, I mean, I start to realize like, man, like internet is so much faster here, logistics is so much better, online stuff, like at this point I was ordering stuff online. As a buyer, I loved it. And that's when I realized like, okay, I can make money. And to make the long story short, I was like, I started selling the stuff that I bought online because I needed a plane ticket to go back to the
Mm.
Philippines to celebrate Christmas with my family. And I was like, wait a minute, did I just make two
Wait a
thousand dollars of
minute.
the shoes that I just sold? So yeah, so it's like really like, I guess same thing
Yeah.
as Anna's situation. I mean, I really didn't set for to become a full time seller. I was just like, wait, like that literally
Yeah.
just because I had to pay for my because we were out for a month, so I had to pay for apartment, cell phone bills, like pretty much a
Yeah.
full month of expenses with not being here. And I knew that sucked, but I was like, okay, I'll sacrifice the sneakers that I've bought. And when I came back, I was like, okay, that's it. So literally, I was driving for Uber to make $450 a week. That's all I needed to
Yeah.
make to break even. That was like my living expenses. And that's when I started like how to sell sneakers, how to sell shoes on eBay. And I Googled it, and Glenn's article popped out about this guy paying off his
Yeah.
$50,000 student loan. And that's when I was like,
Yeah.
oh crap, 50 is a lot. I mean, at this point, I probably was
Like, I
making
need
like
like
28,000
two.
a
Yeah.
year or something like that. And
Yeah.
I was yeah, I was like, I,
Yeah.
I said I can make this, right? And that's I watched his YouTube channel. I was like looking at it, I mean, joining his Wednesday
Yeah.
live because he was already doing it by this time. And that's when I got an email. It's like, yo, like, hey man, can we do a video call or Skype just to have a few questions? And man, this is the most cruel thing that Glenn has done to me. And he responded and said, sure,
Oh.
7
Oh.
a.m. tomorrow.
That was a
I
test.
was like, what? Like, who does a video call at 7 a.m. Um, I don't know. You might have to explain why you said it at 7 a.m. But after that, um, he just gave me some tips, and I was sitting at the outlet parking lot
Oh my
because I want to be there
gosh.
when they open, because that was one of his tip. Yeah, he one of his tips is you gotta be first in line.
Yeah.
You gotta be at the store early so you find the good finds. So which was now I realize like crap, like if you're not first in stores, like people could be like
Yeah.
grabbing better stuff than you already. So that's what he told me. Executed on it. And really the biggest thing the that I did crazy that year is like, what, this was like March. I know it was springtime already. And this is that year we went from like zero sales to
Wow.
$127,000 in sales in one year. And yeah, because like that just gave me so much like confidence, like okay,
Yeah.
like I'm ready. But yeah, that was my story. But why did you schedule that call at 7 a.m., by the
Now
way?
look, now Ken's kind of over exaggerating because he meant 7 my
Oh.
time, 9 his time. So really it wasn't even that early.
Time zone.
But that's still early
Oh my
for me.
god. But that's
It
Wait,
he's-
for real? For real? For real?
you said you were at the outlets. They didn't open that early.
that is
You
early
wouldn't
for
be
That's
there
you
true.
at
That's
though
7
true.
a.m.
still. Why were
That's
you
true.
up at
That's
There
true.
was
7?
cars behind you. What?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. But yeah,
Why
but
was
why
I
were
up at
you
7?
No, you that's probably because you still work at the family business.
Oh,
Actually,
that's true. I think that's what it was. I think I had to go in at
Yeah, so
8.
tell them about that. Tell them about that for the people that don't know why.
Oh,
Because you were still part time, or you were still working full time, but and then you
yeah.
went part time and you full time. Like how is
Yeah.
that?
So the family business, I helped them because I had that design background and everything. So I told my parents, because they didn't have
oh
any
yeah.
help with like their website, logo stuff, anything with that. So while I quit my full time job at the university, I told them that I would help them, build a brand new website. At least people can actually purchase items on the website. Like they didn't have anything, and so I was like, let me do this, and work for them, and I could still, resell on the side and still try to build that up. And so I was working there, and then I ended up just full time
Yeah.
there, but still reselling. And then I was like, all right, let me slowly get out of this, which was actually pretty tough
Yeah.
too, because, being the family business, and they're like, where do you think you're going? Matter of fact, my mom was just like, you want us to pay you like
You're
real
like,
money to work here?
yes.
The
Services rendered.
so
I
that
mean,
was
I
Oh
could
my
send you an
gosh.
invoice everything you ate
I'm
growing
glad
yeah,
up.
you
So
exactly.
yeah,
And everything
that
I've
that you
done.
didn't charge for it. Ken, I'm glad you asked that because I feel like you guys both come from
Exactly.
somewhat entrepreneurial families or backgrounds, previous ventures and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I kind of didn't. I mean, my private practice was my own business that I learned how to run a private practice from working in
yeah, that
one.
Yeah.
was
But
entrepreneurial.
like my
Yeah.
parents weren't entrepreneurs, like, there was nothing like that kind of in my background beyond myself still. And so I just think that's kind of
Hmm.
interesting. And I also had the thought that we need to make a Ken Glen Venn diagram to see like what you have and what similarities you have in your stories and like where the overlaps are. I think that would be interesting.
Hmm. Yeah,
Who do you
like what
know?
my
Like,
seven, what my 7 a.m. meant
Yeah,
to Glenn.
right.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that is so true. It's 9 a.m. at the time. It was still early. Maybe because it was really cold. That's
I think you
like
are
Mm,
grasping for
wintertime.
that must have
When
straws.
been
it's
it.
yeah, when it's really cold. Yeah,
It must have
whatever
It
it
been
was
just
was.
been
But
cold,
rainy.
and you were
He was coming
hungry,
down with
and
yeah,
you
that's
just
what it
something.
like,
is. Yeah.
just so much was
I
going
mean,
on.
no, no, it was definitely. I would say, um, you know, on a serious note, that was the first time that I actually reached out
Yeah.
to a stranger for help.
Mm,
It was for me, right? Like being a strong personality going back, I would
Yeah.
have never seen myself uh in a situation like that because I was like, okay, I'll figure this out. I'm that kind of person. But I was ready and I realized like if I wanted to go further and to do things bigger, I have
Yep.
to go beyond what I knew. And that's how I was like that struck me to a point that because like a visionary or a strong personality's downside is being ego driven, arrogant, or like I know it all kind of mentality. And I've heard it like like you're kind of know it all, but
Are
really
you like,
that
thank
was
you?
one of like the exercise
Ken,
that
you kind
broke
of
through.
know
And
it
I was
all.
like,
Thanks.
and
Appreciate it.
yeah, that's what I was response before. Like, wow, oh, I'm glad you know. But that was it. Like after that, it was more of a
Mm,
seek for more knowledge, and that kickstarted my social media journey because I wanted to learn from other people, and that's when he started introducing me to other social media people or influencers that was helping other people through social media. I absorb it. So that's how I created my account.
yeah.
I was just, I didn't really even post my face until I actually personally met Glenn and
Oh,
we posted a
wow.
photo together. That was literally my first time posting to, yeah. But I mean, even Glenn did that too. Like you're right. Like I think that was the first event that you went out to, in person in Chicago.
yeah, I really didn't go anywhere. I mean, I just figured you emailed me because you're just like, man, if this guy can do it, anybody could be able to do this. Look at
Yeah,
this
Well,
right.
guy.
honestly, welcome to the club, right? Like this is all such a full circle conversation
Yeah, that is the
because like
club.
that's also why we're here doing this right now.
Yeah.
Like, we want to keep
Mm-hmm.
getting better and going further together type of thing, but we also have all personally experienced the value of like of what that's done for us already in our journey so far. It's like, okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like we just learned so much from each other. We encourage each other. And also back to the social media thing for you guys. I think even the term influencer like kind of has a certain connotation now. Maybe just being kind of like
Yep.
shallow or surface level or something, but like I obviously don't see either of you guys like that. And I know you and I know your integrity and everything like that too, and the depth that you have. But it's like really so much about being encouraged more than anything else, I think, for people. It's like being encouraged
Mm.
directly and also just by seeing someone else's example. That's so encouraging. And none of us would take the next step if we
Yeah.
didn't have enough encouragement to do so, whether that comes from our internal
Yeah.
resources that we have already or from external sources like seeing other people do it. So, how do you see your role like as an
Yeah.
encourager, or like, is there another word that you would choose or another kind of aspect of being a public facing internet person that, would you call yourself an influencer? Would you call yourself an encourager? Like, how do you think of it?
What? Yeah. What do you think, Glenn?
I
Glenn's really
I
good at
really
answering this stuff.
Do
I
you?
really hate the word influencer. Like I think it's I
Yeah. Yeah.
do. And I
He
also
cringe. He cringe.
I cringe and I hate like when I say like when I talk about like our Wednesday shows or the people that follow the channel, I like to say more like well the
Yeah.
live chat said
You're not
this
like
or
my
like in our
followers.
community we said this.
Yeah, because that's not how it is.
Exactly. And I get
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many other people that I do
My
know. I
fans.
My
know
fa-
I hate that. Yeah, like, oh my followers. Well then I'm like, oh, I hate that word too. And I'm like, I guess
yeah.
because the social media part, like with Anna, like you not posting anything, I don't think that's
Yeah.
necessarily wrong either. I feel like if you put your head down and you're working on
Yeah.
something and you're not, I guess, on this talking to a lot of people, I think that like you
For
can get a
sure.
lot
For
of
sure.
work
And I am
done. Like you could
highly
really build up,
Yeah.
distractible. Yeah.
your store and
Like, I have to be careful with that. Yeah.
and so I like that too. I, but then I also think you to really grow though is like you never know what
Oh,
you're going to
yeah.
learn from some other person that's willing to also give that advice too. And that's the thing though too is like, I would get comments or people in the DMs too like, well, why are you like helping other people? Even with Ken, they're like, why are you giving this info
Yeah.
for free? Why are you doing this or whatever? And for me, like I tell them too, like I learn from him just as much as I learn from other sellers too that might want to share any
Oh,
advice. And I feel
yeah.
like you could learn anything from anybody, depending on what kind of advice they give or maybe some experiences that they went through. And so, I learned like so much from Ken throughout the years that I never would have probably thought about or even known. So without the community part of it, I think it definitely, at least my business right now, would be
Yeah.
a lot smaller and just a
Yeah.
lot smaller, also in a little circle and meeting people
Right.
around the US.
Yeah.
When would we be able to do that? Like we
Right.
wouldn't.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think what he said is like, just knowing Glenn, like, because of like his intentions are just so pure, he would never really like put himself. I mean, one of the things that he said the most is like, why would I feel entitled? Be, um, because I'm just another
Right.
human being like anybody else. And I was like, that, that's so true, because like the moment you put yourself above somebody else is really
Yeah.
when entitlement comes. That, okay, I'm better than you, right? But if you come in with a mindset of like, wait, we're just learning from each other, building a bigger network, um, like even more recently in my travels, I think within the last 24 months I've really like stepped into the role of traveling, doing more activations and stuff like that. They address me as an influencer. I mean, it's in the back of my head, like I just see Glenn like,
Yeah.
oh, like,
Put a
like I
filter on
don't
this guy. He's an
like like
influencer.
like
Oh
I
man.
Oh my
yeah, I know,
gosh.
hair and makeup, please. No,
Yeah.
I'm joking. I don't call myself that, but it
Well,
is definitely an
yeah.
industry standard,
And
right? That you are
it helps other
actually
people
causing.
understand what you're doing,
Yeah, it
creating
is. It is a
content. Like,
term,
yeah.
right? Yeah, but what I actually put in mind, so I don't like melt and hide away. I actually think of the thing is, if somebody's influencing others that doesn't have
Yeah.
a good intention, that actually causes more harm than
Mm,
good. So I said, if somebody's going to be an influencer and you're calling me one, I'd rather
Yeah.
be that person, because I want to share what I have experienced with that kind of like me and Glenn dynamic into a bigger perspective. And I think that kind of like connected on how me and Anna clicked at eBay Open last year, because out of a sudden she didn't know our story, but it's from what it sounds like she picked up on it so quick that we pretty much just hang out and bonded throughout that. Like, what was your experience when you like met me and
Oh
like, oh
yeah.
wait, this guy's
Well,
an
I
apparent
didn't even.
influencer or something like that?
It's like,
You're like,
who
who's this
is
guy
this guy?
think he
No,
is?
no,
Yeah.
but truly, like, I think I already. So, like, you can know about somebody, right? And you can also see whatever they put online
Hmm.
and put to be like facing forward, and all their front facing information, the public facade, whatever. You
Right.
can learn a lot about somebody, but and maybe this is for me exaggerated because of my training with like therapy and working with people, but like I rely a lot more
Hmm.
on like what I would say is experiential knowledge, like or what other people might call vibes, right? It's like
Mm.
I'm judging the I'm
Vibes,
not like
right?
judging you, but I'm assessing and determining like who you are and what you're
Hmm.
about based on my experience of you above anything else. And frankly, like I lived under a rock. I didn't know anything about anybody that I was meeting. It was all brand new to me. And the first thing that you did before um, our like seller week of like filming and stuff even started was you invited and included anybody who was around and like in arm's reach. You like kind of rounded us all up and were like, let's go grab dinner. And you broke the ice and you talked to us and you expressed genuine interest in us, like me and some other sellers that were there, and sort of got our defenses down. Like you made it really easy for us to realize like, oh, there's like actually a potential for some genuine community here with people that are totally like-minded. And that's actually, yeah, total strangers that
Strangers
had
too
never
at
met
the
each
same
other
time,
until
right?
that moment. And that struck me so much because I don't know. I mean, I figured partially it was probably your personality, but partially that was intentional, that you were like, all right, I'm going to like get the party started, kind of, but not just like because you like to be in a party, is because those connections are so important. And that's where the depth
Hmm.
and the mutual learning and the relationships really come from. You have to connect first, and you're really good at connecting people.
Hmm.
So you like immediately set the stage for all of us to just be at ease. And I think that all of us that were at that dinner the first night got so much more out of the whole experience than we would have if you hadn't done that
Yep.
for us. And you just generously did that because it was like the right thing to do.
Hmm.
Totally.
Yeah, Kenny's a
So
great
I guess
talker.
the
Hence the
eh,
podcast.
Totally.
I'll have stories for days, but
There you go.
hence the
Yeah.
podcast, hence the
Yeah.
welcome to the club. I think this is a full
It
full
is.
circle moment of this episode, that what we have experienced from each other in different levels, where me and Glenn have collectively working with each other for so long, extensively, and to a point now we're trying to extend that further out, with the experience that we've had with Anna, and now with other sellers being more involved with seller community. This is what we want to provide, and we want to actually branch out to different categories, learn from different categories. And Glenn, what else can you add on to that?
Yeah, I guess, and also just to hear others' experiences, their stories, what they're selling on eBay, and what are they going through at the moment as well. I feel like a lot of sellers, whether it's updated news or economy wise or selling wise, there's something we can all like share and go through, and to kind of like, hey, how can we improve? What can we do,
Totally.
to help each other out as sellers? So I think we can provide all that and
Definitely.
a little bit of
Da da
entertainment.
da 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 da. So
A
much
lot, a lot of
entertainment.
entertainment,
The
a
A
lot,
lot of
a lot,
occasional
a
entertainment.
lot, a lot
s-
of entertainment.
the occasional
No big
psychological
words. No big
analysis.
words.
No, I was gonna say
Okay, go
the
ahead.
piece we didn't address is
Oh
how
man.
Yeah.
Glenn and I became friends, which is Ken forced us. So there you go. There's that. No.
Done and
Yeah.
done. Ken
Ken was
forced
like, "You
us,
Well,
guys
and
have
that
to
is
be
it.
friends with
yeah,
each
I
other."
mean, it's like you don't have any options.
You guys have to be
Yeah,
friends.
And
This
we
is
were
yeah,
like,
Anna. This is
"Okay,
Glenn.
fine."
So shake
yeah,
hands
No, no, no.
and
I'm just kidding.
yeah,
I'm
okay, I
just
guess
yeah.
so.
kidding.
Get
No,
along.
but I do
Yeah, get
think
along now.
to
Yeah,
piggyback like
but
the last. I don't know that I have a greatly entertaining thing to say to cap that off, but I just wanted to say like we're here not to talk at anybody. We're here to discuss with each other and with you. And like,
Hmm.
we are interested in all the perspectives, like sometimes what you learn the most is not from someone directly
Hmm.
telling you like, hey, you should do this. It's like little nuances of like, well, how does this person think about this issue? Or, how did they conceptualize this? And how did they set this up
Hmm.
from the beginning in their store that sells a totally different type of thing or on a different platform or whatever? So, yeah, we're here to kind of like just be that open book that has multiple perspectives rolled into one.
I
For
like that.
sure. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our first episode of the Seller Club. And again, welcome to the Seller Club, where you can learn from each other and build and grow a community that understand each other. So that is it. And my name is Ken.
And I'm
And
Anna.
I'm Glenn, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Peace.